Hi guys, the Novice Reader here. It's been a minute. I haven't uploaded anything in months and I apologise for that. I'm just not a very consistent person. But today is Halloween, so I thought I would give recommendations for horror because it's something that I'm quite interested in and I've got big selection here of books. I'm gonna try and make this video a bit more not the standard recommendations because I could easily recommend Stephen King. As you can see, got a big selection back here, which you can't really see, but I have a big selection there. If you want a horror, Stephen King, Halloween, fantastic. But for Spooktober, I thought maybe we could go down some different avenues, do some recommendations that aren't always shown on BookTube. Maybe they are, maybe I don't see them. BookTube is a big place. But the books I have here, we'll start off with Cthulhu and H.P. Lovecraft. So this is going to be books related to Lovecraft, not necessarily Lovecraft. So for example, The Call of Cthulhu and Other Weird Tales. So this is actual Lovecraft. So this is actually his writing, his stories, which I really enjoy, but I don't necessarily think that they're the easiest to read. So if you're new to horror, if you're new to Lovecraft, I wouldn't exactly recommend these books because, if you haven't read, historic literature or classics, then I think you will struggle with this writing style. But if you think you can handle that, then I would go straight into this and I would go straight for The Call of Cthulhu as one of the first stories. As you can see, this edition I have here is the vintage Lovecraft, and it is a vintage classic. And it's a really nice cover. It's 3D, which also has these 3D glasses in there. Haven't taken them off, haven't tried it, but I'm sure the cover looks 10 out of 10 with the glasses. So that's the Cthulhu for Lovecraft. But if you're not that interested in Lovecraft, I have some alternative suggestions which may be more up your street. So if we go into the next book, this is The Mammoth Book of Cthulhu. Again, beautiful cover, as you can see. What this is basically, even it says it right here, new Lovecraftian fiction. So it's an anthology of stories that are written in kind of Lovecraft's cosmic horror, all that sort of thing. So things about Cthulhu, but they're written in more modern prose, so it's a bit easier to get into. And here on the back of the book, even it says a thrilling collection of new weird fiction inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. So again, I think if you're interested in Lovecraft, this I think would be a fantastic start. It's got a bunch of authors here. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not familiar with any of them, but I would recommend this because I've read one or two stories in here, and they've not been bad. They've been actually okay. But again, it's a great place to start with Lovecraft if you don't want to start with the actual Lovecraft, whether that's because of his books or whether you don't like him as a person. That, completely up to you. So the other books that I have, which I think I would definitely recommend, would be these from Arkham Horror. So we got this one, which is The Devourer Below. Then we got the Wrath of Nakai, which is this one here. And then you've also got The Lair of the Crystal Fang, which is this one. So they're all from Arkham Horror. This first one is an anthology. Again, highly recommend. Great. It's all basically kind of Lovecraft-esque. It's all cosmic horror, but it's set all within the 1920s. So it's that kind of occult detective sort of stories. Again, this was, a good first step for me when I got into Lovecraft. I didn't actually go in directly with H.P. Lovecraft's original work. I went in with this book, and this actually gave me a better understanding of what cosmic horror is in more easy to understand and more kind of relatable modern day prose. So this one has several stories, and one of them is actually set in ancient Greece, which I thought was really interesting. It's got ancient Greece is probably a great place for some sort of like cosmic horror. So I definitely recommend this. These other two, these are again from Arkham Horror, but they are standalones. And they're both, again, as you can see from like the covers, it's that 1920s noir sort of look. And it's all about, what originally Lovecraft did was all of his kind of detectiveness in the 1920s when he was writing these stories. So these are full-on novels. And again, I haven't read these as such, but I am a big fan of Arkham Horror. So I would recommend these, even though I haven't read them. That's a great recommendation. But if they fit anything like The Devourer Below, I am, I have full faith in Arkham Horror being able to do Lovecraftian work. So again, recommend these. There is another anthology that is the sequel to this one. Well, not really a sequel, they're separate stories, but it's a separate one. There might be more by now, but yeah, check that out. This, as you can see, is a great cover, which is what originally caught my eye. And if you look at some of those images on the front, they relate to the stories within. So yeah, again, Arkham Horror, great place to start for Lovecraftian fiction. And then lastly, which is the book I'm currently reading, which I am really enjoying, is The Dead Take the A Train, which is by two authors, one by Cassandra Core and Richard Cadbury. Apparently, one of these authors is more into cosmic horror, and one is more into urban fantasy. But together, they have crafted, a very interesting cosmic horror within an urban fantasy, kind of similar to the Dresden Files, which you can see back there. The main character is a witch, sorceress, has magical abilities, hunts down demons and things for money, but there's also this whole other kind of infrastructure around Wall Street and how basically Wall Street is all, supported by cosmic horror, and I think that's really interesting. Again, the cover of this is absolutely fantastic. I noticed this cover and that's what drew my eye. I found it in Blackwell's in Oxford. And again, I just really, really, really am enjoying this. It's I'm about 155 pages in, and I haven't really been able to put it down, which, considering I haven't made a video in a while, the reason for that is because I've not really been into reading. But this is one of the books that's getting me back into reading. So again, I 100% recommend this. If you're a fan of urban fantasy, I'd recommend. Cosmic horror, recommend. Fan of things like the Dresden Files, and again, I'd recommend. It's not too dissimilar to the Dresden Files. I think it's kind of got the same sort of level of like humor. The amount of gore, I think, is probably a bit more intense. Or it definitely is more intense in the Dresden Files, so be warned about that. And that warning should go for all of cosmic horror. I think it's not as pronounced in the original Lovecraft work, because I think it's more up to interpretation, a lot of those things, but in more of these other books it is, modern day, we are a bit less, we're a bit desensitized to horror and violence, so things kind of have to be a bit more shocking to get the same sort of reaction that people got when they originally, read Lovecraft decades ago. Even though Lovecraft himself wasn't a very popular writer while he was alive, it was only after his death did, it spawned this whole sort of like subgenre of cosmic horror, which is what all of these books are. So again, if you're interested in cosmic horror, this is the type of books I would, suggest for Halloween. I think they're great fun, and they're, they give you something that's not just, even though I've just given that spiel about gore, it's not just gore, it's the kind of the idea of us basically being little bugs, in the grand scheme of the universe, we're nothing. And there's things out there that we just can't even comprehend. We couldn't even fathom the things that are out there. They're so against human understanding, and that's what is terrifying about it. So again, cosmic horror, these are some great suggestions. So, if you're interested, please pick these up. So the next ones we're going to go into are classics, because horror and classics go hand in hand. I think some of the best horror writers of all time, unfortunately, are no longer with us. And they've written their books hundreds of years ago or so. And as one of my friends once said, back in the day with these classic authors, you had to be the best of the best. You're not going out being self-published. You're going to be the best of the best. No one could compete with you, and that's why you were published and picked up. So we'll start off with the kind of more standard, and we'll go a bit less standard, hopefully. Saying that, actually, no, we won't. We'll be going pretty standard. So Dracula, again, this is quite a nice, Halloween read, I'd say. It's the story of Dracula the vampire. I think most people, at least even they haven't read this, understand who Dracula is. So again, I'd really recommend this as, kind of almost a cozy read, which is a weird thing to say about the most, notorious vampire book of all time. This edition is a pocket-sized edition that I picked up in Waterstones. As you can see, very small, fits for the pocket, nice cover, gold pages. And when you take the cover off, it's a nice little edition. So I read this and I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was, less horrifying than I thought with Dracula. I think Dracula was more psychologically terrifying than physically, which I thought was very interesting. It was definitely against what I originally thought Dracula was going to be about. So if you haven't read it, please, give Dracula a go. Next one is one of my favourite books. It's I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. So this is basically, as you can probably see from that cover, it's vampires, not zombies like the Will Smith film, which, is not great. I actually prefer the book to the film. So basically it's the last man alive, called Robert Neville, and he's the last person alive, or at least he thinks he's the last person alive. And he's trying to figure out, why people have turned into vampires, and he's exacting his revenge on them as well. Has one of the best endings of any book, I think, or at least one of my favorite endings of any book. So if you haven't read this, it's a short read, and this edition is a science fiction masterworks. It's a short read. I think it's only 162 pages. So you could read it in one sitting, and again, it's a perfect book for Halloween night. So that's I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. So going next is Shirley Jackson, The Haunting of Hill House. Again, another classic, and a classic for a reason. This is the perfect ghost story, to read in the dark on a night like Halloween. This is a Penguin classic. You can kind of tell the difference between the Penguin classics and the Science by Masterworks. They're kind of similar-ish, but slightly different. But the Penguin ones are great. So if I was you, I'd pick this up as a great little ghost kind of story, Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Again, really good book. Lastly, with the classics, I'm trying to go through these a bit quicker because I know I don't want to take up too much time. This is Algernon Blackwood, and it's The Wendigo and Other Stories. This is an Oxford World Classics, and as you can see, I'm currently going through these stories. So Algernon Blackwood is a author from the 1900s, I believe. From 1869, he was born in England. So basically, he did a lot of traveling around America and Canada, and he kind of wrote stories about his experiences. Some of them are set in America, Canada. One of the ones I've already read is actually set in Germany. But it was this kind of like mystical time of the late 1800s, early 1900s, where the world was going from kind of the mystified era of everything not being explained, going into the modern day of science and technology and things. So it's that kind of in between where the unknown was starting to be known, but there's also these gaps where people still didn't understand, and they had to fill in the blanks with horror and monsters. So I've read three of the stories in here already, and Algernon Blackwood's writing style is fantastic. It's really, really easy to get engulfed into it. The reason I wanted to pick this up was because of The Wendigo. Haven't read that yet because I'm actually saving that for tonight for Halloween. And again, the Wendigo is a horror creature from Native American folklore that's basically been in a lot of pop culture recently. I think it was in Supernatural, it was in the game Before Dawn. Is that what that's called? I can't remember. It's one of those games. And it's also just been in a bunch of different things. It's the whole kind of story of, someone who gets really stranded during the cold winter and has to resort to cannibalism, and then when they resort to cannibalism, they kind of get possessed by this demon, which turns them into this monster that then goes on and keeps committing cannibalism. And Algernon Blackwood's writing style was really, really, I want to use the word picturesque, because it's really easy to visualize everything that is going on in his stories. He's a very good writer. He's very clear of his descriptions, but he's also clear on the horror as well. So someone like myself who does sometimes find it difficult to visualize stories, I think this was an easy one to do. So again, Algernon Blackwood, his anthology of short stories, and again, beautiful cover, so highly recommend. Okay, going on quickly. So I've got a few more anthologies here, which I think anthologies are pretty perfect for horror, especially for Halloween. You just want to kind of sit down in one sitting and go through a scary story, don't you? So we've got Tales from the Dead Night, which is 13 classic ghost stories, which probably could have come through with the classic section, but I thought I'd include it here with the other two anthologies I have. So again, this is just 13 ghost stories, and ghost stories, Halloween, hand in hand. So there's definitely kind of a massive group of different authors, so you get a bunch of different writing styles, but again, it's classic, so they're all very good at their craft. And yeah, I think this would be great to pick up because it's 13 stories in one, and as you see, the whole book isn't even that long to include 13 stories, so recommend this. So the next two books are books I picked up recently, which is Beyond and Within Folk Horror and Uncanny Island. So I've been very interested in folk horror, kind of the horror of the British Isles, the United Kingdom, and Ireland, because we get a lot of horror, especially here in England, from America, Stephen King, all this sort of things. It's great horror, but sometimes you want something a little bit closer to home, so it makes it, for anyone out here who's from the UK, kind of makes it feel a bit, more real, because it's kind of in your setting. It doesn't feel as alien as reading about this scary these scary things that happen, you know, across the ocean or across the world. So folk horror is a bunch of short stories on folk horror. Surprising. Explore. Here's what the back says: exploring ancient natural powers, superstitions, rituals, and folklore from around the world. So maybe this one is not just from England. My bad, but yeah, we'll edit this part out. Don't worry. But there are some big authors in here. So there is, you know, Neil Gaiman, for example. He's in here. So I think folk horror is something that's a bit different to cosmic horror. It's almost kind of like the opposite in a sense. Cosmic horror is the unknown. Folk horror is the known, in the sense that it's kind of like in your back garden. You know, it's in the world around you and not some entity beyond the, you know, the understanding of mortals, as we should say. But yeah, it's a bunch of short stories. How many is there exactly? It's about 18, I think. About 18, all from different authors, all by the looks of it from different areas. And different interests, and I think that's what you want in horror, is a bit of a, you know, bit of plethora of stories. You want things from different worlds, from people's different experiences, from people's different cultures and understanding, because something that, you know, you could be used to could be horrifying for someone else. And I think folk horror isn't something that gets explored enough, and I think it's starting to in pop culture. I think there's a lot more kind of horror things popping up from like kind of folk lore and folk history. So I think this would be a great place to go. And look at this edition. Amazing, is it not? Got great on the side, gold. Yeah, so that's really nice. So I think folk horror would be, you know, suggest that one. Uncanny Island. The reason I picked this up is my heritage is Irish, but I was brought up in England. So I don't really feel like I have that much of a connection to things like Irish short stories or Irish fiction, even though majority of my family still live in Ireland. So I do go there, you know, regularly. This is a British Library edition. I actually think the British Library are doing an amazing job with horror. If you want to look into that, go onto the British Library's website or go onto Amazon, Waterstones, things like that. If you're in America, not entirely sure, but my UK viewers, look at the British Library, because they basically have, I think it's like 70 editions of just short anthology horror stories from the UK. There's things such as like horror stories that are set in the oceans around England, or horror stories set in Cornwall, or stories set, you know, in the Lake District, things like that. So it's just a whole kind of plethora of like really, really interesting stories by British authors. And but saying that, this is an Irish version, so this is short stories set in Ireland, which I think Ireland is actually rife for kind of horror. You've got the fairies and the fae and things like that, and I think there's so many pagan sort of superstitions and pagan sort of like, you know, folklore, that there's so many amazing stories, and there's so, you know, there's so much scariness in that small island of Ireland. So I think it'd be really, really great to, you know, give this a go. If you're not from Ireland, I think this would be, you know, interesting to see the mythology from there. If you are from Ireland, then again, it might be nice to, you know, up your kind of, you know, your understanding of Irish literature. So again, this is a British Library edition. Again, it's really nice cover. Perfect for, you know, Halloween, Spooktober. Last two modern books, just for a bit more fun. The first one is Dead Island, the book. Told you this is going to be a wide range of books. Don't worry, this was not £48. It was not 48p. Maybe it was 48p. I picked up a car boot sale, so I'm not entirely sure. It might have been 48p. But this is basically a novelization of the game Dead Island. So Dead Island is a zombie game where a bunch of individuals are stuck on a tropical island when a zombie outbreak happens. So this is a novelization of that. I'd say the very first part, maybe the first like 100, 150 pages of, yeah, I say fantastic a lot, but I mean it for this. It's great. I think as the story goes on, it starts to turn, it's not as great, and I think you can kind of really see where the video game aspects come in, you know, the fetch quests, go do here, go do that, speak to this, you know, NPC and stuff. It's a bit more obvious in the later half. But overall, it's a fun, quick read, only about 300 pages. So if you're interested in a zombie book, Dead Island, you know, might as well pick it up. And the last book, again, Irish literature, called The Watchers by A.M. Shine. This was a really, really great story that I almost read in 1 or 2 sittings. I think it's now been made into a film. And it's again what I was saying before about the uncanny island. It's that sort of Irish mythology that's being explored. So this is based. I don't know how much to say. It's a part of Irish mythology that I don't think is explored enough, but it's also quite a terrifying aspect. So I think if you're interested in learning more, I'd really recommend this. It's set on the middle to west coast of Ireland. A woman gets lost in the woods and her car breaks down, and then she's basically chased by monsters until she finds somewhere to survive with a bunch of other survivors. And it's their story of them trying to survive and how they escape these monsters. But there's more to the monsters than just being monsters. And I actually I saw the Aim Shine. I've seen him on Instagram and things like that. He seems like a really nice guy. He's also got a second book called The Creeper, which I have read, and again, I'd really enjoyed that. He's also coming up with a sequel to this, so it's probably the perfect time to get this book. And again, look at that cover, fantastic. So AM Shine, The Watchers. If you're interested in Irish literature, or you're interested in a story that's horror but isn't set in America, England, more in Ireland, then please pick this up. So yeah, that's my bunch of horror recommendations. I'm not gonna lie, I've read the majority of them. A few of them I haven't read, but I am confident that they're just fun books and they fit quite well into those categories. I have heard of other people talk of them, but I won't take up any more of your time. So thank you for sitting down and watching this. And if you've got to the end, give yourself an award because I know I've rambled a lot. But yeah, I hope you have a good Halloween and a good rest of October, which is only 12 hours left. But yeah, try and pick up some horror books and enjoy them. If you've read any of them, please let me know below. I'd love to be able to have a chat about them. Cool. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone. Bye. Have a good evening.